Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this morning's Education Executive. Do we have any apologies?
Yes, we have apologies from Councillor Nimmo and also apologies from Fiona Craig.
And apologies from Provost Coleman. Thank you. We just to make the committee aware, we've also had a resignation from the committee, and that Brendan McGuckin has moved on to take up another post. He was one of our external representations from the church. We welcomed Brendan's contributions, albeit only over a short period of time, but they were very valuable, and I would just like to formally record our thanks to him for being part of this committee, and wish him all the best and as he goes on with his academic career. Thank you, colleagues. Any declarations of interest? No? Okay, thank you. Move to item 3, which is the minute of the Education Executive held on 5th September. Can we agree it is accurate? Okay. So any issues that aren't on the rolling action log that have been raised in the minute? No? Thank you. Agenda item 4 is the rolling action, been updated. However, if there's anything anybody wishes to raise? No? Thank you, colleagues. And we'll take it, agenda 5 just now. Just the regional collaboratives. Robert, are you going to?
Thank you, Chair. We had previously had some discussion about regional collaboratives within the committee following our response to the Education Next Steps consultation document. Over the course of the summer, representatives of Solace, ADES, COSLA liaised with Scottish Government on the proposals that were contained within the Education Governance Next Steps document, particularly with a view as to what would constitute collaborative working across Scotland. Initially, the document had proposed that a regional director be appointed, and that regional director be appointed to report to, in the first instance, Education Scotland, and then to Scottish Government directly. There was also much discussion about where the responsibility for school improvement and quality improvement would lie, and it was very much the view of COSLA that responsibility should remain with local authorities. So, as I say, there was much discussion and negotiation over the course of the summer, and at the COSLA leaders meeting on the 29th of September, an agreement was reached whereby regional collaboratives would be established, but the lead officer for those collaboratives would be drawn from among the participating councils. It was further agreed that that lead officer, once identified, would take up post on a seconded basis, and the responsibility for appointing the secondee would lie with the 4 chief executives of in our case, the 4 chief executives of the participating councils, and that they would interview candidates together with the acting Chief Inspector of Her Majesty's Inspectorate of Education. That process took place with a deadline of, or a targeted deadline of collaboratives being in place by the end of October, and lead officers being identified by the same date. I have been successful in applying for that secondment, and will officially take up my secondment next Monday on the 13th. Across Scotland, there are 6 regional collaboratives. We now have the details of all 6 lead officers, and I anticipate that in the coming weeks and months there will be invitations for these 6 lead officers to get together, both among and between themselves, but also with Scottish Government colleagues and colleagues from Education Scotland. We have in recent days been nominated a a liaison with Education Scotland. A gentleman by the name of Donnie MacLeod will be working with the Forth Valley and West Lothian Collaborative, and we will, in the first instance, have a target of coming up with a regional improvement plan and indeed a regional workforce plan by the end of January 2018. So that's where we are at present. Some of the details are highlighted within the report, particularly paragraphs 4, considerations. It tells a bit of the background to what I've just summarised, but the detail of the aim, purpose, scope and focus of the collaborative working is highlighted in quite considerable detail within the appendix, which is the note produced by COSLA at the leaders' meeting on the 29th of September, and that's attached to this report as an appendix. Happy to take questions at that point.
Okay, thank you, Robert. I would first of all congratulate you on taking up the lead officer role within the regional collaborative. And I know that at management level people are quite excited by this, and work has already started to identify a number of contacts across the 3 council areas, and they're keen to start to share some good practice and actually get involved in some work. I would therefore move the recommendations as in section 2 of the report, and therefore open up for any comments or questions.
I'll second that report, and also I'd like to give my congratulations to Robert. There's a lot of work ahead and we're moving at a swift pace here, but I believe we've got a good man there with his head getting round it all.
Any comments or questions?
I think we should congratulate Mr Naylor on his appointment. I'm more concerned as to how that will reflect or play out here in Falkirk. Obviously, it could be a bonus to us. I'm sure it will be to have somebody on the inside track. But what will be the situation? I mean, how much of your time will you be away? Neither John or I have got this report, you see. But we can deal with that. We can deal with that matter later, because we are moving at a swift pace, you see. But so what I'm concerned about is, I'm interested to know the time scale. Where will you be based? And if you're going to be away at this building, how long will you be at the building? Many days a week, for instance?
I'm afraid I'm not able to answer that with any definitive certainty, but I will be based in Falkirk. I'm in discussions with the Chief Executive just now, but I think it's most likely that I will, on a day-to-day basis, be based here in this building. However, I will be retaining a contact with my management team at Sealock House, and will be keeping up to date with them. It remains to be seen what the daily pattern of work will be. For example, I've already been invited to attend the corresponding committee in all 3 councils at the earliest opportunity to introduce myself and give an overview of some of the work that we're going to be doing. I anticipate I'll be meeting probably in Glasgow and indeed in Edinburgh with Scottish Government officials and with Education Scotland officials. And I also anticipate that I'll be attending head teacher meetings, not just in Falkirk but in the other 3 councils as well. So it's a role where I think I will be out and about a fair amount, but my base will be in Falkirk Council.
Could I just clarify, the secondment is for a period of 6 months, and it's a full-time secondment for that period. As the appointment has just been made, there's discussions ongoing later today with regard to how Robert's post will be backfilled to ensure that the service is covered across the management team.
I would understand that's got to be the situation. You've got to cover your own back door, and I appreciate that. Our priority here is Falkirk, of course, and the children and the teaching staff here in Falkirk. As your colleagues say, you're moving at a swift pace, but whilst I understand the necessity for it, it's like everything else. Until the arrangements were in place, well, we'll change it. We'll congratulate the gentleman on getting the post. When will we get the information? And who will be doing all this? I mean, who's involved in that discussion? Because we have not been involved in it.
I'm meeting myself and Councillor McHugh are meeting with the Chief Executive directly after this meeting to start that process.
So you'll have the definitive position by 5 o'clock. You'll be able to email us at 5 o'clock.
I'm not sure that we'll be in a position to be that quite definitive, but the process will be discussed this afternoon, and as soon as there is an agreed action plan in place, members will be made aware of that. And there will be an update report to the next Education Executive.
I accept that. I'm just surprised that we didn't have a position ready in case, in the event that Mr Naylor got the post.
There has been discussions, I understand. I don't know whether Mrs Piccathley wants to maybe explain between the Chief Executives.
Yes, as you say, Convener, this has moved at a pace, so the appointment was only confirmed, I think, on Friday, so we have had discussions. Obviously, there will need to be a process gone through to ensure equity and fairness in relation to any arrangements for backfill, so that will kick off now, and we'll be able to confirm that to members very quickly.
Okay. Sorry, Margaret.
Yeah, it's page 5 of the report, paragraph 6.1, and it's the lead officer. The backfill would be each council will contribute their share of the backfill. How is that share divided? Is it on the number of children, the number of teachers, or the amount of support that each council requires? Can you fill me in a little bit about that? Because the budget for Falkirk is coming out of the existing children's services budget, which I think is very tightly squeezed at the moment.
That is still to be agreed with Chief Executives, but I think Mrs Piccathley.
Yes, the 4 Chief Executives have discussed this and agreed in principle this is what will happen. Anyone who was around at the time of reorganisation will remember our 532 formula for sharing things across Falkirk, Stirling and Clacks. That was generally in proportion to the population. Adding in West Lothian to that mix, you would end up with some formula of that similar to that, or we may agree 4 equal shares. We've still to take that forward, as I say, this very, very fast moving. But there is also the potential for some funding to enable the collaborative to get underway, and we're obviously part of those discussions that are taking place with Scottish Government at a national level. If that happens, then there would be no additional cost to any of the councils.
Just final point, when was Mrs Piccathley made aware that Mr Naylor had been successful?
It's a 2-stage process. There were appointments a week or so back, interviews, etc. But the proposals for each of the 6 collaboratives, having selected amongst themselves which it turns out to all be directors, serving directors in 6 local authorities across the country who've been appointed after interview. But those were not appointments that could be made without referral to the DFM and agreement by Education Scotland. So that was a process that I think was only confirmed on Friday. It might have been Thursday, but it was certainly the back end of last week.
It's just unusual that even the opposition councillor would be advised that, yeah?
It's not a council appointment.
No, I know that.
So,
employee.
well, yes, but I mean, we knew this report was this committee was coming up. This is the first opportunity we've had. I think this report was written on the same day as all of this came through. So this is the first opportunity to formally advise members of the position.
Councillor Alexander.
Yes, Convener, can I add my best wishes to the Director for his appointment. I think it's an excellent opportunity for not just the Director but also for the local authority. Because it's clear that when you return to your home, so to speak, in 6 months' time, that you'll come home with a great deal of experience that you haven't got at the moment. And that has to be positive, that has to benefit the children of this authority area. And really, at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. It's about talking to each other, it's about picking up best practice, and it's about sharing best practice. I'm sure that while we'll benefit from that particular process, I'm sure other local authorities will benefit from the experience of our Director. And you know, we're all Jock Thompson's bairns at the end of the day, and if kids elsewhere benefit from that, then that's fine by me. We have a situation where there's a major opportunity for us, and I'm sure that in 6 months' time we'll be sitting down and looking at something that has produced big style for Falkirk.
Thank you for that.
I'd just like to add my congratulations as well, and it would be good if the Scottish Government actually provided some funding for it, having initiated the whole process. I think we would welcome that as well.
There's discussions ongoing. Okay, on that, colleagues, can we agree the recommendations?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, item 6 is care expansion. Gary, are you going to take this one?
Yep.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, Chair. The purpose of the report is laid out in section 1.1. There's 3 things that the report's intended to provide the Education Exec today. It's to alert the Education Exec of the proposed expansion plan for Falkirk that was submitted to the Scottish Government to deliver the expansion to 140 hours by 2020. It's to outline the strategic approach that was taken in providing and producing that expansion plan, and it's to provide the Education Exec with a current estimate, and I'll use the word current estimate, of the financial resources required for the delivery of the early years and childcare expansion plan. The 4 recommendations today are set out in section 2. It's to endorse the expansion plan. It's attached to the report as Appendix 1. To agree the strategic report taken, and probably more important to note that, as we've said all along, this expansion plan will be the subject of ongoing discussions with the Scottish Government, the Scottish Futures Trust, the Improvement Service. It is a very iterative document, and it's very much work in progress, and it will change as we go through the coming months and years. And it's to agree that the Director provides a regular report, and there will be regular reports just for that very reason. It is a work in progress document on the extent to which Falkirk expansion plans are submitted and are changed. By way of background, and we've mentioned it before in section 3, that the Scottish Government have intend to expand early years childcare from 600 to 1140 hours by 2020 for eligible 2-year-olds and all 3 and 4-year-olds. All 32 authorities were asked to submit expansion plans to the Scottish Government by the 29th of September. That brought a lot of work over the summer period with lots of colleagues in the Council, and I'm very pleased to say that Falkirk submitted the expansion plan on time. The expansion plans are based on a number of planning guidance, and they contain a number of key assumptions. The key assumptions are laid out there: that the revenue capital funding will be made available, that local authorities will be supported in their investment, producing their plans, and they will get support to expand the workforce. And the workforce expansion is one of the key indicators and the key things that's associated with the plans. The expansion plan must be phased in over a period of time. So, for example, we've got to start now, and every year there will be an array of investment which will lead to expansion of the early years and childcare sector in Falkirk, which is to be welcomed, and with that will bring added jobs to the area, and it will be phased in up to ultimate delivery in 2020. Probably more importantly, the financial plan was submitted on a base of series of financial cost indices that the government laid out, and these were government indicators that all councils had to apply for. So the aim there was that all plans, when added up, they would at least be submitted on the basis of a level playing field, and we're currently in discussion with the government around those indices just now. I said earlier on, there's a paragraph there that the document is very much a working document. Since we've submitted it, we already have had a meeting with the Scottish Government, the Scottish Futures Trust and the Improvement Service as a moderation to it, and we were the 9th of 32 councils to have that. So they intend to come back once they've completed, probably in the next 2 weeks, a visit or meetings with all 32 councils to moderate and to consider the variances that have been applied to each of the 32 very individual submissions. Best value principles apply, and it's up to local authorities to make sure that in doing that we still maintain the best use of our assets, and a lot of what we do will be aligned to the strategic asset review that's going on just now. We're also asked to ensure that whatever we develop, it's a blended approach, so it also ensures that as I say, the funding follows the child. So we've got to make sure that parents can have a choice between partner provider nurseries, childminders, or indeed a blended approach that would allow them to have a provision within our nursery classes or our day nurseries as well. It's also vitally to this, and this is fairly new, is that if there are gaps identified in current capacity, there are a number of ways that we can expand our infrastructure. And probably more importantly, it also looks at providing outdoor nurseries. So there are a number of outdoor nurseries being provided in Scotland just now that are being through a test of change. They're pilots, and we're looking at a number of them. And that's a creative way to use outdoor space, to expand into outdoor space, and to create a capacity within a school or an infrastructure that doesn't always need to be bricks and mortar based. So we're looking at that as we go through this as well. And that's part of the innovative and exciting process we've got. In section 4, it looks at the considerations. The actual expansion plan document attached to Appendix 1. It's a 16-page document, and it sets out a broad overview of our plans and proposals. In addition to the expansion plan, the Council was also required to submit a very detailed statistical and financial document called the Financial Template. And a lot of the key data in that has been churned through just now by the Government, along with all the other 31 councils. And that is what they're talking to us about in terms of where there is certainty and surety or broad comparisons, and where there's things that there's differences or differences of approach being applied by different councils. So we expect to bring another report back to the next the Education Exec that updates that and informs just where we are in that process. Some of the key strategic aims are outlined in section 4.1, and we mentioned them before. The national aims are to support parents' return to work or study, to reduce poverty and improve outcomes for the children and families overall. Everything we do embraces the 4 key themes: and quality, flexibility, accessibility and affordability. That runs through and is paramount and primary to all the discussions that we've had around the submission of the plan. Section 4.3 to 4.5 looked at some of the challenges around the demographics that Falkirk and the district faces. Taking the population figures from the registrar's information, by 2021 Falkirk's population is expected to rise by 3.2% to 163,517. In comparison, the 2 and 3 and 4-year-old population is likely to increase by 2.8% to around 5,500. So part of that has to be built into our expansion plan so that we can make sure that we're future-proofing it as we go along, that we're not just taking the current eligible 2, 3 and 4-year-old cohort and expanding for that. We need to be well aware that the population for the children in those cohorts is increasing as well. So to meet the capacity, to meet the increased population, that we need to roughly increase capacity by about 70%. Again, it's laid out in section 4.5, and that offers us a significant challenge to do that. Changes to the delivery model. At the moment, we are looking at providing flexibility. And the flexibility around nursery classes is we're looking at making sure that if nursery classes are open for parents from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. over the 30 weeks at term time. Our earlier centres will offer the same 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. provision, and that will be over 50 weeks, and that allows parents, again, they can have this model, blending model, allows parents the right to choose between the two to make sure that they can get a model of delivery that suits themselves. In addition to that, the voluntary and partner nurseries and childminders were looking to increase provision by around 215 places. And you will recall that was the estimate that was given at the previous report that we brought to the Education Exec. Again, that may change. Again, this is looking at the current dynamics, the current figures, and as we go through the talks with the Government, that may change. But certainly, part of our plan is looking to increase that provision to around 10% of our overall capacity within the Council. In terms of the current financial estimates, now I will say they're current financial estimates. We expect these to change. These are based on indices the Government gave us, and indeed the Government have, since we put the report in, outlined a broad brush of an overall funding package for it, albeit we don't quite know yet how that's going to be sort of divvied up between the 32 authorities, and that's the part of the discussion that's ongoing. The current estimates are around 30 million of revenue costs and 28 million of capital funding. We expect the next report firm up on that and a bit more as we get some feedback from the talks that are ongoing just now. In terms of our infrastructure plans, the current plans show 51 individual asset infrastructure projects are required, and that includes currently 15 extensions and 11 new build projects. So again, significant investment in the infrastructure within the school estate, within Falkirk, and that can only be welcomed. Workforce expansion, I said earlier on that the critical to this is to make sure that we've got a qualified workforce to meet the demand and as we grow the capacity. In section 411, current estimates really mean that we need to bring in increase the workforce just to over 1,000. So it's almost doubling what we've got in place just now. Again, significant inward investment, and it should be welcome because it'll bring with it fairly well paid and a number of good qualified jobs as well. So that can only be welcome. Expansion of school meal provision, notwithstanding some of the challenges we've got around infrastructure expansion, we've also got to make sure that there is universal provision for all the children eligible 2, 3 and 4 to get a school meal. And what we've got to make sure is that whatever capacity we put in place, we're able to deliver on that over the lunchtime period. There's still a bit of definitive explanation as to how you define lunchtime period, but nonetheless, within our overall capital costs, we estimate around £1 million is needed to expand kitchens, to buy additional equipment, and to provide additional infrastructure within the kitchen to provide meals for all of those cohort. Section 414, as I said, it is a phased implementation plan. Our plan is that as soon as we extend an establishment, that we will, once that's complete, we will start the delivery of the 1,140 hours from the date that that's complete. And that's an important part that's been phased in to it. Again, that's subject to the finances being agreed, and at this point in time we're talking to the government and all parties about that. Section 5 lays out some of the consultations that were received, and was quite substantial numbers. 408 responses were received when we undertook the consultation initially in March of 16, and 570, a significant number, responded to a similar exercise that we carried out as we're required to do before we put the expansion plan in at the very start of the year. The key thing to us in terms of Falkirk is 76% of those that responded expressed a preference for using nursery classes to take up their 140 hours, which is why the primary focus of our expansion plan is to cater for the majority and to cater for the provision to make sure nursery classes, and there's 45 of them in the state, have the capacity to deliver it. Again, the consultation findings are shown. They're in section 2 of the expansion plan itself. And to add to that, I can say that we've worked very closely with our neighbouring councils to make sure that we're broadly comparable. We're looking at the ways that they're doing it. We're looking at creativity, innovation, and really to check what other people are doing to make sure that in Falkirk, if there is bright lights out there, we can maybe tap into it. Or indeed, if we've got some innovative, creative things, we can share the thinking around colleagues. We also have extensive liaison with the Scottish Government Early Years team and the Scottish Futures Trust, and also ADES, and there's been also dialogue with Solace and COSLA on this. In fact, there's probably significant dialogue and exchange of information on this over the last 4 or 5 months. The implications in terms of the resources, I mentioned the financial resources that are before. The risks in terms of section 6.3, that again, with any significant expansion, this is probably the most significant expansion plan that I've ever been professionally and personally involved in since I've been at Falkirk. The key there is that we've got to make sure that the delivery of infrastructure projects on time. More importantly, there's sufficient financial resources to do that, and also notwithstanding that, to deliver it, we make sure we need to have staff qualified, recruited and in place and on time to actually provide that capacity. In terms of the conclusions are set out in section 7, it is a very challenging and significant project. It's a multi-service approach because we couldn't do it without colleagues in development services, and we couldn't do it without support from our financial colleagues. In fact, an array of colleagues across the council are all involved in looking at the design and the proposals and the various options that we have in terms of the early years expansion. It does provide economic and employment benefits and opportunities as we go forward for Falkirk area, and that certainly should be welcomed. I'm happy to take any questions on it.
Thank you, Gary. I think it has to be recognised that this is a significant piece of work, and there's been a significant amount of effort put into this. It's very challenging to deliver both choice and flexibility in a situation such as this, and we're working towards that, and it will be very fluid, so members will see this probably in virtually every education executive as we go forward. But I think it will also see positive movement in the right direction as the expansion moves across the council area. The aim is obviously to ensure that we give our young children the best possible start in life, and that's one of the key focus on this. The added benefits is also at creating the opportunities for learning and employment for parents, and therefore, as Gary's highlighted, taking the holistic approach to learning and inward investment to economic development. So I think that this is to be one of the most positive policy initiatives for certainly the whole of Scotland, and certainly we should be taking advantage of it in Falkirk to improve the quality of life for everybody. I'm happy to move the recommendations in section 2 as detailed in the paper.
I'm happy to second that report. Really just to add my own thoughts and show appreciation to the amount of work that has went on. This is huge. This is a huge project, and it's changing the way we do things right across Scotland, and I think everybody in that team has worked really hard to get this plan together and moving forward. I'm particularly excited about the fact that there'll be a massive ability to have early intervention in our youngest children. Because they will be in nursery a lot longer, then we will be able to make such a bigger impact on them. And that's one of the things that I really appreciate coming from my background. Because so often in the past, the frustration is that we don't get a chance to work with our children longer to make that impact more permanent. So I'm looking forward to that. And just to say, let's move on with this, and that's brilliant.
Open it up for comments or questions. Councillor Spears.
Okay, thank you, Convener. Thank you, Gary. Very impressive piece of work. Very impressive delivery. Funding follows the child. At last, we're trying to get things right. There's been such a piecemeal approach over the last 20 years that 25 years I've been involved, particularly with my own child. And at last we're getting joined up thinking here. We're going to be able to provide meals, so we can provide special diets, we can influence things at a much earlier stage. It also allows the best possible start for young parents who, let's face it, both parents need to work nowadays. Let's start looking at it not just holistically but realistically, that we need to take control, or control needs to be given to the parents so that they can maximise the options for the best upbringing for their family and the best opportunity to work. Congratulations, and as you say, we'll hear about this on a month-to-month or 6 week to 6 weeks basis. Keep up the good work.
Thank you. Councillor Goldie.
Happy to support your comments and the comments that have been made about the report. Convener, Falkirk Council is well known for its innovative approaches to various situations, a great many of them in education, so yep, we look forward to it. It's good that we're going to be employing more people. That's at this time in local government, in fact anywhere in Scotland at this time, to be employing more people is a great idea, is a great thing, and of course more importantly the kids. I always have that wee bit of a niggle, sometimes a wee bit of concern about the people who are going to have to lie on extra hours, but hopefully the fact that we're bringing more people in will ameliorate that. So that should, well, concern was always, as I say, first of all for the kids, but in terms of the teaching staff or the people working in nurseries, that if we can ameliorate that by bringing in more people, well, that's a win-win. So it'd be churlish not to say that, and we'll look forward to seeing the implementation as it goes along.
Thank you. Councillor Alexander?
Yeah, Convener, just associate myself with the comments that have been made so far. But can I say as well that one of the comments that I missed, that I should have made in the previous report, which has probably been demonstrated by this report, is to say that, well, the director will be a miss during these periods of secondment. The quality of the team that we have in education is such that I have every confidence that it maybe won't be missed as much as
I think that's a backhanded compliment, Robert.
There is a compliment in there. There is a compliment in there. There is a compliment in there. That I'm sure he'll agree with me that the quality of the team he's leaving behind is such that we can have every confidence. And I think this report demonstrates that. This is perhaps the biggest change in preschool education that there's ever been in this country. And when we look at that in conjunction with the closing attainment gap and the efforts that have been made there, then we see that we can no longer claim that to do nothing wrong by doing nothing is acceptable. And I'm glad that we're seeing the emphasis on education the way it is at the moment. So look forward to future reports, and I'm sure the director will keep in touch and be one of the interested parties in what comes next, because it is clear that there's major challenges before us, but the greater the prize, usually the greater the challenge. And I'm sure this is one of these occasions where that will be the findings of the department and the findings of this particular committee.
Thank you for that. Margaret?
Yep. Well, thank you very much for the report, and it's interesting to see how this is all going to develop. It's obviously going to be a huge cost to every council across Scotland to expand. I mean, we're doubling the hours for every child. But I think it's got to be recognised that we need quality in the quantity of the staff that we're employing in each of the establishments. And I think we should maybe look at more modern apprentices. I'm a great supporter of modern apprentices because we're training our own staff by our own staff. So we get a really good quality of staff in that cohort. I'm also delighted that you've included outdoor nurseries. I mean, I've said right from the start we really need to be imaginative in our approach to the expansion. I'm a great supporter of outdoor nurseries because I set up the first woodland classroom in Falkirk in Kinneil Wood in Bowness when I was a nursery teacher there. This adds to the choice for parents. But I mean, parents have got to be on board with it because they see risks, they see the children being outdoors in all weathers. Oh, you know, they'll not melt. You know, they won't dissolve. Children love it. We don't need much equipment in an outdoor classroom. It's all there. It's all natural. You might need a hut to store little bits and pieces. They need outdoor clothing, that kind of thing. But you don't need a lot of equipment like you would in a classroom-based nursery. But I think we've also got to remember that the staff have got to be highly trained. They've got to want to be in these settings. And the parents need to want their children to be in these settings as well. It's not going to be everybody's choice to work in these outdoors every day, 360 whatever many days in the year. So staff need to be on board with it. And it's got to be specialised staff that are in these outdoor nurseries. So I'm really pleased that outdoor has been included in the imaginative approach from Falkirk Council.
Thank you, Margaret. Does somebody want to make a comment with regard to the workforce?
Just to echo the comments and with thank you, just for information, Cam Thompson is the project lead really for the project, and her and her team's done an immense bit of work on it. But just to add to the points, modern apprentices are a major part of our expansion programme and will continue to be that. And this is a first iteration of the estimated numbers. It may well be that those numbers go up, because certainly we are working with the Employment Training Unit and all parties to college to ensure that we get a maximum throughput of it, because you're right, quality, and the government said it along, the key factor in delivering this is quality of staff, quality of setting and quality of education delivery. I don't think anybody can argue with that, and it's the 3 Qs that are paramount across everything we've done. To mention Councillor Goldie's point as well, that we are looking very carefully at the contracts that we do offer all the staff to come in. No staff will be made to change their contracts. Again, it will be additionality, and we see a lot of part-time working coming into the sector in the future to suit a varying array of needs as well. So individual contracts we'll be looking at, and that's paramount, and one of the things we'll be looking at with HR to make sure that we have that flexibility of approach across the 8 to 6 period in question.
Okay, thank you for that, Gary. Councillor Garner?
Hi Margaret. I agree with everything you say there, and I like the outdoor nurses as well. I think that's a great addition. But you did mention that it would be a huge cost to the council. I think Gary could maybe clarify that the cost is Scottish Government funded.
It is the Scottish Government have said it's wholly funded. I think Margaret was saying that the overall cost to councils would be high, but again I think the government are fully funding it. The outdoor areas at the moment, again, some of the calculations that we've put in here will be refined, because no one's really had an outdoor area in Falkirk, don't know the cost, and there's a whole range of calculations, so we're not going to focus on it to do it. The key to outdoor area is having the space. You've got to provide a shelter area, and probably most challenging, you've got to provide appropriate toilets, and that's some of the things that we're looking at. You don't there's an appropriate number of toilets to make sure that there is areas, so there's a number of things there. Margaret is right, you don't need a lot to buy a lot of equipment for it, but you do need to do some. So again, hopefully with the next one we might come back with some innovative and creativity around it as well, but we're applying it as we go through, and we're learning. This is a learning process for us. We've not done this before, and all the team are learning every day when we look at it.
I think we might leave logistics for another day. Okay, if everybody's content, we agree the recommendations in section 2. Thank you. Moving on to item 7, response to the Scottish Government's consultation on fairer funding. Gary, you're going to take this one as well?
Well, thanks, Chair. Okay, the purpose of the report is laid out in section 1.1. It's to provide information to the Executive and Falkirk Council's response to the Scottish Government's consultation on fair funding to achieve excellence and equity in education. There's 2 recommendations today. The recommendation is set in section 2. It's to endorse the consultation response that was submitted to the Scottish Government, and to request that the Director keep the Education Executive any key outcomes or changes from this consultation. By way of background, and laid out in section 3, the Scottish Government published the response to the recent consultation on education governance in June of 2017. And part of that consultation was that they were going to do a subset consultation on fair funding to achieve excellence and equality in education. And the key points to that is that the government were asking for views on different approaches to school funding, looking at models of current education delivery and how we would change that in the future. The key thing was that in terms of to align to the Scottish Government's model, it was to look at giving autonomy to head teachers and to give increased accountability to head teachers, so that it would the key aim is that how you devolve funding to head teachers, it should align to improved decision making. So part of that was say, what is your views on that? The consultation response had to be on Friday the 13th of October. In terms of section 4, the summary of the consultation document, there was 8 key questions, and some of the questions had double questions to it as well. They're laid out in section 4.1. And you can see that when you look at the questions, some of the aims around that, mainly around devolving of funds, autonomy, will it support and aid added value to decision making in school, and will it support head teachers? And there's a bureaucracy element to that as well. In terms of section 4.2, that we can confirm that Falkirk submitted their response to the consultation. It was a full response, and that was submitted on the 13th of October on time. Appendix 1 contains an exact copy of the response that was put in. Section 4.3 summarises the key areas that Falkirk views, and I have to say that the Falkirk views were probably in keeping with a lot of our local councillors' views. And again, this was one where, in the lead up to the consultation, we had a meeting with our local neighbouring authorities. There was various discussions held at National Professional Association level at ADES and Solace, and COSLA were very keen to circulate a lot of things. So there was loads of papers circulated on it with people's views. There are 6 key points in terms of this that probably summarise Falkirk's views. The primary one is that the head teacher focus must remain on learning and teaching, looking at raising attainment and closing the attainment gap. Bureaucracy and anything that detracts from that shouldn't come into the equation, and that was paramount. And I think that echoes a number of national responses that were in the press in the last week or so as well. And any changes to funding models must be evidence-based, and they must clearly indicate how outcomes will be improved or attainment for pupils will be improved. And again, that's paramount. If you're increasing devolution of funds to head teachers, there's got to be a clear outcome attached to it. Probably more importantly, the current DSM scheme that every council operates, and indeed that Falkirk operate, it has sufficient flexibility within it to ensure that external funds, if they are given to schools, it can come through the DSM model. And again, the next point really to add to that is that Falkirk are in favour of working nationally with the government, ADES and others to look at consideration of a national DSM scheme. A national DSM scheme doesn't really mean that Falkirk would have to do everything nationally 100%, but a lot of what we do is broadly comparable. So if we had a scheme that covered 80% of it, 80% of it would be based nationally, so you would get transparency, equity and clarity of approach on a national basis, but the other 20% could look at areas that were unique to Falkirk. For example, how we prioritise funds in areas of deprivation or rurality or anything like that. So we think that it would be, certainly we'd be in favour of working with anyone towards developing a national DSM scheme. And I think most councils took the view that that would be quite appropriate in this particular case. One of the things that's often underplayed when we look at devolution of funds is the role that the central support services have in supporting head teachers to support schools. And one of the key responses is that head teachers are not accountants, they're not lawyers, and they're not experts in a number of technical areas. So the central support function has to be maintained to ensure that professional and technical advice is given to head teachers to make sure that the decisions that they make are made with the best professional knowledge in place and they're made correctly. And that's an important factor that underpins a lot of our response. Central support services are a key factor in making sure and giving added value and added information that inform appropriate decisions. Another important factor, in the last bullet point there, and it was raised earlier on, is that at this current moment in time, the regional improvement collaboratives are just being set up. We've heard the report this morning, and at this stage, we're not quite sure how taking them forward will potentially impact on fair funding to schools. So again, that's very much fluid at the moment, as indeed a lot of what we're doing just now is quite fluid. So I think we'll have to just wait and see how that develops to see if it can influence and change some of the views there. In section 5, it lays out that there's been wide consultation on this, and locally we did have host a meeting with our regional improvement collaborative partners to discuss all aspects of a fairly detailed fair funding consultation document itself. In terms of the implications, there's no real implications just now, other than the implications will flow from the outcome of the consultation response that the government makes. So once we get that back, we can consider how it will impact, particularly within the Falkirk area. So in conclusion, I would say that any potential change to the current system of distributing funds will have an impact in Falkirk Council. Our aim is, if they are going to change it, we want to be at the table to influence that change in a way that can suit Falkirk. And we will also, it's important that officers monitor the consultation response, and we are engaged with ADES and a number of other partners in this, and will be in the coming months, and it's important we'll keep you informed of any outcome to that consultation response as it's received. Appendix 1 shows the consultation response. I'm happy to answer any questions on it.
Thank you for that, Gary. There was an all-member seminar to actually look at the response, and I think members should be able to see their views reflected in the responses contained here. Falkirk's response hasn't been any different to what has come forward through the leaders at COSLA. It's very, very similar comments across the councils, and again similar feedback from the other professional bodies of Solace and ADES as well. So I think there is a theme developing there, and hopefully that will be able to be developed further in collaboration with the local authorities, so that we do get a fair funding scheme coming forward. We're asked this morning the recommendations to endorse the consultation as submitted, and request that further updates be brought back following the outcome of the consultation. I'm therefore happy to move the recommendations in section 2.
I'm happy to second that.
Any questions, comments, colleagues? No, we're happy to agree the recommendations.
Sorry, just to say, Convener, that obviously this is a fait accompli anyway here, because we've already made the submission, and it has been the widest possible consultation, and that was the aim of the Scottish Government, and that's to be commended. But it's one thing to consult, but it's another thing whatever you do after you've consulted. Because consulting is one thing, but reacting to the people and the responses that you get is another. I don't think I've ever seen a proposal being consulted on that's met such a range of opposition views to it, being opposed to it. I accept that something had to be done, because in Scotland at the minute, I don't know if you're aware, Convener, but there are some teachers, head teachers, who are in charge of 6 primary schools. There are some posts that haven't been filled since 2014. So I accept that we get to a situation where something has to be done, given the poor response to that situation. Having said all that, here we are, and we find ourselves, as Mr Greenhorn saying, and he's quite right, of course, head teachers are no accountants. So it's strange that you would put somebody in charge of a budget that's not an accountant. You wouldn't do that. You wouldn't let the wife look after your finances in the house if you couldn't account. And this is basically the same, only this is a massive problem. The other things are right. Of course, sorry, that's not busy being sexist, I'm just talking about my particular situation. So,
you need to be careful about generalising things like Goldie.
I've got to be careful, but as I say, I'm certainly can talk about my situation anyway. But what I would say is, first of all, you're right that head teachers should be focused on teaching. That should be focused on that, and around the schools. You've got a whole range of things that you're doing. You talk about consultation with the Scottish Government. We asked, John Partick and Alan and myself, asked that this very important situation should be taken to let all the councillors in Falkirk Council discuss it at the full council. And you rejected that. So you want consultation, you'll not even let other members in your own authority respond to that situation. Just before you press the button, we did ask you to go to the full council.
I'll deal with that point just now, Councillor Goldie. This consultation was available to all members to input. There was an all-member seminar that everybody was able to attend, and their choice whether or not they took that up.
I'm very well aware of that. You didn't take it into the council chamber. You didn't let it be a debate. They agreed the consultation after you had refused that you're going to the full council. I'm not going to follow you about it, because I feel accomplished. There's no years since all getting steamed up about it.
You're misrepresenting again.
Am I?
The consultation, there was no set preamble for the consultation, there was no set answers for the consultation. The officers held a consultation, discussions on the consultation in this very room that was open to all members to participate, and those comments of the members that attended you can actually see clearly reflected in the response.
Thankfully we've got a recording convener here.
Absolutely.
I'm no misrepresenting you. I didn't want to misrepresent anybody.
There was
what I said,
it was a consultation.
I'm always going to get a fight here. What I said very clearly was, for your benefit, I will repeat it once again, right? What I said was you were asked to take it into the council chamber and allow all members debate it in the council chamber. After that, the consultation took place. That's what I said. Had you not taken the decision not to take it in the chamber, you wouldn't have needed to have another consultation. It's a moot point, but it's no use consulting. If you refuse here, it's actually bad leadership, convener. That's what it is.
I'm sorry, Councillor Goldie. I think that is extremely uncalled for.
What's uncalled for?
And that is your perception, your personal perception.
That's right.
Absolutely. What I can clearly say is that every member in this council had the opportunity to participate within this consultation, and their views were taken back and are reflected within this response. If anybody wishes to say otherwise, then they're happy to do that. But nobody at the point of submitting the consultation indicated that their views were not represented.
I never said that, yeah. I didn't say that.
Margaret, I think Margaret was first.
Right, okay, thank you. I think Falkirk's response is not really out of line with many of the other 32 local authorities, as far as I can understand, in the submission they've put in. And I think Gary has highlighted the fact that head teachers are not accountants. I think the clue is in the title, teacher. And the focus has to be and remain on learning and teaching, raising attainment and providing the opportunities for pupils. It used to be that every school in Falkirk had a finance committee which included all members of staff. And perhaps this is something that we should be going back to within our schools. And it takes the pressure a bit off the head teacher being the focus of the spending. The staff then have made the decision jointly as to how budgets are spent. And I think we should probably be going back to that kind of model within our schools.
Thank you for that, Margaret. I think that's a useful comment. However, Gary did highlight there's a role for the centre in supporting head teachers, and I don't think there's every intention for those head teachers to be turned into accountants when there is the support that could be provided centrally. Councillor Alexander?
Yes, the issue of the Finance Committee is something that is worthwhile looking at with regards to whatever suits the individual school. I was at a school last week, the week before last, sorry, and reported to the director my findings, which were that the money from PEF has been used in innovative ways. It's true the head teachers aren't accountants, and my experience is that head teachers are involving their staff, if not formally through a committee, then they're certainly involving their staff through communication, two-way communication at that. And what we're seeing is some excellent innovations in our schools. It would be unfair to name the school that was at, but the director will confirm that I did speak to him with regards to the findings of one of the local schools. The issue of the funding, I was present at the seminar, and I was grateful for the opportunity to contribute to the consultation process. I don't think there's anything in it that any of us can disagree with. None of us want to see the head teacher being a permanent accountant. We want to see them teaching, but equally we want to see local solutions to local problems, because what's relevant in one school is not necessarily relevant in another school. And this way we get the opportunity to look and see what the head teachers and through the head teacher, the staff's initiatives and identified needs actually are. So that aspect of the whole process we welcome. We also sort of welcome the fact that the resource is there in the first place, because it's clear that it's a significant resource, and it's clear that it's been used in innovative ways. So far from turning what is a good news story into a bad news story, I think that, or down a side alley, a blind alley at that, then what we have is a good news story. And I think as the time wears on, as we see the initiatives coming forward, have been made public. It's early days for a report back with regards to the significance of the PEF monies. As we see that come forward, I think that all members' experiences and concerns will be put into perspective, and they will certainly be answered, particularly those who perhaps have a more negative view of the processes than I have.
Thank you, Councillor Alexander. Maureen?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, having been on the other side, been one of the central support people in a past life, how much head teachers actually do appreciate that support. And in the last days of my career, if you like, it was becoming increasingly obvious that the burdens being placed upon head teachers, which were non-teaching, was becoming something very onerous. And if the government funding was to continue as they were hoping it would, in the hands of head teachers, I think it would be an intolerable burden for them. And I just have to say, central support is essential for good education. It allows the head teachers and the teaching staff in the school to concentrate on that very vital task that they perform.
Thank you.
Thank you, Fiona. Just to say that all these helpful comments about the support that's being given centrally, will then some recompense being given to the central funds for that support? Is there a percentage of the additional funding that will be allocated for the extra work that is going to be required for the level of support?
I'm unsure if it's specific as a percentage, but maybe Gary might be able to give an indication.
I think at this stage it's too early to say with this paper how it will come out, but yes, I think if we are asked to quantify anything that puts increased evolution to school, we're always very conscious to make sure we've got additional support at the centre. I'll give you two examples. The early years paper we spoke about before. A key component of the early years expansion has been to expand the team, and the Education Exec agreed to expand the team to enable us to get a team in place to do some of the early preparatory work. And indeed some of the PEF money, the head teachers themselves have asked us to strengthen key areas within the central support team, finance, data management and HR resource, to enable them to do their job better. So they've come back and said to us, can we give you money to strengthen that, recognising the central support as key, as Margaret and Maureen and yourself have said. So yes, we're very conscious that anything we do now must be a holistic approach, not just looking at the impact on schools, but looking at the support that sits behind it to make sure we've got the proper support in place.
Thank you. Okay, colleagues, agree the recommendations? Oh, sorry. Apologies, Gordon.
I just, it was just some thoughts went through my mind when Margaret was making her comment, and it triggered some thoughts, because in terms of the comment about a finance committee within the school, the resurrection of that, the leadership within schools in terms of head teachers is not just a top-down approach. It's also about encouraging bottom-up, and it's also about impacting on the culture within the school, and also the development of relationships within the school. So I think that although there is the central support which is necessary, there is also the encouragement of the head teacher in terms of learning and teaching, to bring the staff with that head teacher and to encourage as much communication within the school as possible. and also that would also, shall we say, encourage the projects from parents, from the teachers, and also we are looking at the wider aspect about building and widening the horizons for pupils as well. But I just wanted to say to Margaret that, yes, I got the vibes about leadership, culture and relationships.
Thank you. Okay, colleagues, can we move on to item 8? Before I think we've got a number of things we would just like to highlight to you. I'm going to ask Councillor McHugh just to start off the item with some achievements.
On a lighter note, really, we've taken this opportunity now to highlight some of the excellent work that is going on in our schools. Just in this last month, we've got Bowness Academy. We're shortlisted for the Education Initiative of the Year Award at the Herald Society Awards. They were pipped at the post by City of Glasgow, but they were in the final 3. Also, Labert High School, Graham High School, Falkirk College and Police Scotland were shortlisted for the Partnership of the Year in this year's SQA Awards. This was for the work done in partnership to design, plan and implement a new HNC in the police studies, which is the first of its kind in Scotland. We just missed out on that one as well, but yeah, we've got runners-up prize for that one. That was excellent. And for the primary schools, St Francis this year has been nominated as a finalist in the Central FM Pride of Forth Valley Awards. And this nomination came forward from the parents, which means there's some really good partnership going on with the parents in St Francis. They're the only school nominated from Falkirk. And the fourth one.
They succeeded in School of the Year Award.
Yeah, and won. Woo. And the final one, which was really exciting when I heard it, was Kinneil Primary School. Kinneil Primary School, Microsoft ran in partnership with the publishers of Eden Blyton to recognise 75 years of the famous 5 books. Ran a competition, and the primary 4-5s were invited to put forward. And over the whole of the UK, Kinneil Primary School won first prize, which is an excellent prize and an excellent achievement for the school. If you go into their website, you'll be able to see the comments that have been made from Microsoft, and the input that the teacher and the pupils put in was just fantastic. Thank you.
I think that demonstrates there is a lot of good work already going on within our schools and across partnerships in Falkirk. We have a tremendous base to build on, and I think that Robert will have something to take to the collaboration and be able to share, and hopefully we can build on that as we go forward. But that nicely brings us into the attainment of Falkirk secondary schools. And David, you're going to take this report. Thank you.
Thank you, Convener. The September executive requested, education executive requested a further update once we had the insight data, and that was the data that I alluded to in that report that brought up a wider basket of qualifications from our schools. The report in September focused primarily on the SQA attainment data in terms of the national awards and the higher and advanced higher. So the report before you today is the September update from Insight report. This is the second report that of 3 that we intend to bring this year. A further report is proposed in the spring term once we have got the final Leaver Destinations report, which really is a kind of indicative report in terms of progress within the council, where the young people within that group have left education, and the report comments on their progress. So again, I think that is a very significant piece of work that we will be bringing to a future education executive, hopefully in the spring term. This report has 2 recommendations that we note that the SCQF which is the Scottish Qualification Framework attainment within Falkirk Council, and it also relates to the virtual comparator VC, which is referred to throughout this report, and also the national average as well, and that the committee agrees that the Director brings a further report in the spring once we have the additional data for the leaver destination. Again, the background alludes to the commentary from the previous report, where we commented on the progress on ATC passes, and this report looks at the wider progress, and it includes other certificated courses such as Duke of Edinburgh, the HNCs that we made reference to in the previous report, and other qualification streams that the schools access. Throughout the report, we are looking at the virtual comparator, which is a basket of schools that are similar profile to our schools or similar young people to our young people. So there's a degree of accuracy with the profile of the individual children that we're looking at. What the virtual comparator doesn't do, however, is recognise the particular curricular areas and curricular pathways within each individual school, nor does it recognise that the kind of totality of the demography of the individual schools. And in the appendices we refer to the breakdown of the schools within Falkirk Council and give you the SIMD profile of each school for comparison purposes, and then we further analyse the data thereafter. So I'll take you through the Falkirk Council data first of all, and in terms of considerations, we're looking at the attainment in S4, and it was looking at both the 5 or more at 3, 5 or more at 4, 5 or more at 5, which equates to a National 3 award, a National 3 award, National 4 award and National 5 award, and also looks at the total tariff points. Each one of the particular awards comes with a number of points, and in simplistic terms, points makes prizes. So the greater number of courses a young person engages in, or the higher level of courses a young person engages in, would equate to a higher number of points awarded to that individual, and then that's accumulated to then represent the average figures that we're talking about within the report. Within S4, what we are seeing at SEQR levels 3, 4 and 5 is that we have got an improving trend over time, and that Falkirk is comparing favourably with our virtual comparator and also the national average. In terms of the tariff points, again, Falkirk is seeing a positive trend both with the lower attaining pupils in the lower 20%, and also within the highest attaining 20% of pupils in relation to the virtual comparator. 4.2 refers to the attainment in S5. And in S5 we're looking at the awards in the range of 1 or more at level 6, which is higher, 3 or more at level 6, and 5 or more at level 6. And then also looking at the appropriate tariff points in relation to the lowest 20%, the middle 60% and the highest 20%. Again, we're seeing improving trends within Falkirk Council. The performance broadly matched either the comparator or the national average across the 3 measures in 2017. However, we also recognise in conjunction with our head teacher there is still scope for improvement in all of these areas. In terms of the tariff points, Falkirk pupils again are gaining over time, and whilst the lower attaining pupils in S5 are broadly in line with the national average, they have attained less well over time with the virtual comparator, and the middle and higher attaining pupils at S5 have also attained less well. So again, there's a focused piece of work that we're undertaking. My officers and myself are currently engaging in all our secondary schools through school improvement meetings, where we look at an individual school level and analyse this data quite robustly with the head teacher and members of the senior leadership team in the school. At attainment S6, again we're looking at 3 or more awards at level 6, 5 or more at level 6, which is again higher, and 1 or more at level 7, which is the advanced higher. And again, the tariff point breakdown. I think with S6 we've got a very positive trend with our young people within Falkirk Council, and we're broadly in line with both the virtual comparator and the national average. We then look at the literacy attainment for our pupils in S6 for both literacy and numeracy, and again it's quite crucial that we ensure that our young people are both literate and numerate when leaving school, and our data is very strong for both areas within Falkirk Council. We have got a strong positive trend in terms of the attainment in both literacy and numeracy across our schools. And again, if we look at Appendix 1, we then take the authority data and we split it down into individual school level. So a comprehensive data set. So again, the tables in the appendices take you through the various attainments at S4, 5 and 6 by school and across the various award levels. I would draw members' attention to the table about, one moment please, it's literacy, it's tables 8 and 9 in page 60, which literacy and numeracy attainment in S6. And again, I think the key role of literacy and numeracy in terms of progressing on to a positive destination is clearly indicated here, and almost every school across almost all areas are showing a positive improving trend over time. Those schools where we are seeing slight variation from that are aware of the individual cohorts, and again those discussions are at individual pupil level. So we've got a positive trend within the council, but when you then break it down to areas to ask the questions, the schools are having fairly robust conversations with officers about the particular circumstances that have arisen that may have some variation in relation to those figures. So overall, I would recommend that Falkirk is doing a positive job, particularly in relation to S6 leavers, and I'm happy to answer any questions that members may have.
Thank you for that, David. I think it's good to hear that there is sort of steady improvement, and that there's also the recognition and the aspiration to go further and to continually look to improve. And where we're maybe seeing some of those blips, that they are being fully investigated and actions being put in to support particular reasons. I'm therefore happy to move the recommendations that we note the SQFA attainment Falkirk Council and agree to the future reports being presented to the Education Executive in spring 2018. Councillor McHugh.
I'm happy to second that. As you can see through looking at all the different tables, and I think the virtual data is quite crucial. It gives us an idea, a picture of how we are performing compared to a school of the same makeup. So often our high schools are compared, throughout our council, one doing better than the other, and the makeup of the different areas within Falkirk Council are quite, different, and it's good that we can get a comparison that more fits the school that with the results that they're producing. I'd just like to thank yet again the staff that are obviously working hard within our schools to continue with the improvement that we're seeing here, and long may it continue.
Open up any comments or questions from members? No, I'm happy to agree with the recommendations. Thank you very much, everybody, for your attendance this morning.